It's 2026 and Apple just raised prices across the board on their products thanks to the AI-fueled Ramageddon that we're all unfortunately dealing with. And if you have $1,000 or less to spend and have been asking yourself if you should get an iPad Air or a MacBook Neo, which at first might not seem like an obvious device comparison, but when you look at Apple's pricing, then it does start to make a little bit more sense. I'll take you through why the MacBook Neo might not be the choice for everyone, but also when I think you should probably just get a MacBook Neo. So first, why spend more for an iPad Air? Now, wait a minute, Josh, didn't you just say that these are basically the same price on paper? Well, on paper, yes, but it's when you add things like an Apple Pencil and then the Magic Keyboard, that's where the iPad Air becomes way more expensive, easily topping out at $1,000 if you don't have access to education pricing. So then I think the question becomes, why would you do that, and should you do that? There are a few scenarios where I do think it makes sense to spend more and get all this stuff. Like if you want to take notes on your iPad, have your digital textbooks, and the ability to write using the Magic Keyboard, do word processing, surf the web, all of that in one device that has a touchscreen. Plus, you can detach it from its keyboard and use it curled up on the couch, which you can't really do in the same way with the MacBook Neo. Though if you need to write things up with a keyboard and also digitally take notes, there are a few other options I'll take you through later on that I'd consider as well. Another big reason to go for the iPad is the cellular option. This is especially great if you're on the go and don't want to have to set up your phone as a hotspot. You can just take your device out and it'll automatically connect to the network. At the time of recording, no Mac has the option to add cellular. Speaking of which, if you're in the US or elsewhere, you can typically get a pretty good deal on phone plans that let you add an eSIM to an iPad for no additional charge. Like Google Fi here in the US, which is who I use, they're not a sponsor, though just know that's only on their flexible and unlimited premium plans. Now, the last main reason I think you would spend more to get the iPad Air is specifically the Apple Pencil and the Apple Pencil Pro. The Pencil Pro is the one that I have and the one that I would go with because it can wirelessly charge from the iPad Air just by magnetically adhering to it. Now, where the Apple Pencil really makes a difference when paired with an iPad, to me at least, is digital art. It has advanced features like barrel roll and haptics, plus a cool hover effect, and paired with great iPad apps like Procreate, it can deliver a pretty premium and unique experience for artists compared to your average digital stylus. So if you're an artist or want to get into digital artwork, I think the Apple Pencil paired with an iPad would be a great combination. The iPad Air also offers better color saturation with its P3 wide color gamut, which is about 25% wider than a standard sRGB monitor. Plus, the Air screen can get a bit brighter, and it features True Tone, a display technology that automatically adjusts the display's white balance to match your ambient lighting conditions, which the Neo doesn't have. Now, speaking of screens, if you want something bigger than either of these displays that you can take on the go with you and even use with either device, that's where the Viture Beast XR glasses from this video sponsor come in. The Beast XR glasses allow you to project a 174-inch virtual display using Sony's latest micro OLED tech, and at up to 1,250 nits of brightness, it's actually bright enough to use outside, not just in a dark room. Plus, it has 9-level electrochromatic dimming. You can anchor the screen in one spot in real space or let it smoothly follow your view as you move around. It works with iPhone, Android, Mac, iPadOS, and Windows, and there's no adapter needed for most of those. It just plugs into whatever setup you're already running. So if you want to experience the future of virtual screens today, you can use our code 6 months later for 10% off the Viture Beast. Link to that in the description and pinned comment. And then one other small benefit of going with an iPad Air over a MacBook Neo that I've found is in the smaller configuration, the 11-inch model here that I have, it feels just slightly more portable when you close it up and put it into a bag than the MacBook Neo does. I mean, you could just see the size difference there. It's slight, but it is noticeable. Though if weight in your bag is a factor, I don't think the roughly 150-gram difference between a fully accessorized iPad Air and MacBook Neo is really going to make a difference. So now let's take a look at why you would want to go for a MacBook Neo instead of the iPad Air. First is, of course, price. The MacBook Neo is just going to come in at less money than an iPad Air with accessories, at least the Apple accessories. Now, if you do go third-party, that price difference won't be as much, but typically third-party accessories, especially the Apple Pencil competitors, just aren't going to be as good. Second, and this is honestly probably the biggest reason, it's a Mac. macOS is more open. You can download apps from the web, modify how the OS works with third-party apps, vibe code programs using Claude or Anti-Gravity and run them from terminal, which you just can't do with an iPad. macOS supports more devices and offers a full file system that you can navigate and manage. iPadOS has closed this gap somewhat, but you still don't get the same level of access, which might be important depending on what you want to do with your computer. macOS also has slightly better windowing than iPadOS, though again, the distance there has closed considerably. You can also download games from multiple places on Mac, like Steam versus the iPad, where everything has to be downloaded via Apple's App Store, unless you're in some European country or somewhere else that forced Apple to open up their app distribution. macOS also has full browsers, like Chrome, where you can run extensions like Grammarly or Monarch. Also, circling back to pricing for a second, you actually get more storage for the money. Plus, with the MacBook Neo, you get an extra USB-C port, though if you get a Magic Keyboard with your iPad Air, you'll also get a second port there as well. You also get a full keyboard that's just a bit better to type on than the iPad Air's Magic Keyboard, and the trackpad, while not haptic, is larger and I do prefer it. Another big consideration is battery life. The MacBook Neo quite outperforms the iPad Air. You get 16 hours of rated video streaming compared to 10, and 11 hours of wireless web browsing compared to 10 on the iPad Air. Plus, the MacBook Neo, in my experience, has better standby battery life as well, and that will especially be true if you always have the Apple Pencil attached to your iPad, which causes even more battery drain. So if the MacBook Neo at $699 or $599 for the education pricing here in the US is starting to sound like a pretty great deal even with Apple's recent price hikes, another question you might have is, should you go with the Touch ID version or not? For $100 more, you get Touch ID in the power button plus more storage at 512 gigs. So for a college student or anyone looking for this thing to last them a few years, where you'll be saving photos, videos, and other files, and plus then with Touch ID you get the convenience of paying for things with Apple Pay with your fingerprint and then always unlocking it with your fingerprint, which is just more convenient. For $100 more, yeah, I personally think that is worth it, but this device is totally usable without Touch ID and 256 gigs. Those are all of the main differences that I've noticed between these two. Now let's talk about which one I would personally get for the money. First, if you decide to go for the iPad route, the first place that I would look is for a used iPad or an M3 iPad Air, which is the previous generation. You can typically find retailers selling that version for around $400 or less here in the US. You'll save hundreds of dollars, and honestly, because iPadOS often holds back the M series chip that Apple puts in them anyways, the difference in performance there is really not going to be that noticeable to most people. But honestly, for the money you'd spend on a fully accessorized iPad Air, if I were a student or just wanted a casual computing experience and maybe the ability to take notes, I would rather spend that money on a MacBook Neo plus a Remarkable Paper Pure, Remarkable's latest writing tablet, which the company sent me and I'm currently reviewing. And make sure you're subscribed to see that review later this year. Going that route, you kind of get the best of both worlds. A Mac for everything that needs a proper computer plus a great keyboard to type on, but then you get a dedicated digital note-taking device for notes and ideation that actually feels more like paper and whose batteries can last up to 2 weeks on a single charge, and you can easily see in sunlight. That's what I do. The Kindle Scribe would also be a solid option here if you want a larger screen for reading books, as well as the ability to take notes. Now, the third option that I would seriously consider is a MacBook Neo plus a renewed or previous generation iPad. But this is still going to be quite expensive, especially when you consider the Apple Pencil plus an iPad. You're still going to be looking at around $500 US. This is the option that I'd pick if you want a Mac and you want your digital note taker to be an iPad, because having an iPad to take notes on absolutely has its advantages. You can use things like Apple's Notes app that can also solve equations for you, the ability to mark up textbooks in certain apps, having full color, and the snappiness of an LCD display versus e-ink, plus it can also act as a great content consumption device too. So those are all of my recommendations, but if you have used both of these devices and have thoughts on which one you think people should choose or which one you've chosen for yourself, let me know in the comments. And to see more of my reviews on iPads and Macs, you can click here to get to those, or click here to see more of my comparisons, like my comparison between the iPad Pro and the MacBook Air, and my upcoming comparison between the MacBook Air and MacBook Neo. And make sure you follow us at 6monthlater.net to stay up to date on all of the latest for the tech that we cover. For 6 Months Later, I'm Josh Tedder, and if you made it all the way to the end here, let me know by commenting citrus green. Thanks for watching.